Hello and welcome to today's episode of Stories from the Pack, brought to you by Wolves Fancast. Joining me today, we have YouTuber, football manager, wizard, talking Wolves founder, David Azzopardi. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, mate. Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, but thanks for having me on.
No, our pleasure, our pleasure. Say, sort of, we did one with Finners last week, and something that hopefully we'll kind of delve a bit deeper into today's show is, I guess, sort of YouTube, and I get a lot about what you're doing in terms of streaming. So hopefully, we can get right into it. But as we like to do on Stories from the Pack, we like to almost start from the beginning of when you were a Wolves fan. So I guess for yourself, was it very much from birth, or how did it sort of come about you being a Wolves fan?
Yeah, definitely from birth. I mean, I'll obviously probably go into it a little bit more. I probably didn't follow Wolves very, very closely until I sort of started secondary school, I'd say. But I've still got all the sort of the baby pictures when I'm on holiday and the Goodyear kits and that sort of stuff. So I've still got those. If I ever need to get them out, but yeah, sort of very casual fan, I'd say, mainly because my dad would work at the weekends anyway, so it wasn't like he could sort of take me every weekend. The first sort of times I was going to games was with my granddad. My granddad and my uncle had season tickets, and obviously if they were, or one of them were unable to go, or the guys that they went with, obviously there was a spare ticket that I went. Obviously was able to go, but that for me, the sort of that was probably maybe late Dave Jones, early Glenn Hoddle era, that sort of time. So it's probably going to make some people sound a little bit old, I'd say, probably. But sorry, mate, are you on mute? I can't hear you.
Yeah, I mean,
There you
everyone's got to start at some point. Supporting the club. I don't. Doesn't matter if you're in your 20s or in your 60s, I guess.
go.
But I don't know. So, did you remember? Were you sort of, I guess, following the club at the, I guess, the sort of the first promotion stage? Was that sort of a little bit before? Because that was sort of, I started following them, I guess, when I started really getting into it. Sort of similar to you. I wasn't sort of from like 5 or 6. It was sort of when I was
Yeah,
about at 9 or 10 was
yeah,
when sort of it kind of clicked for me. But mine was almost like a couple of years before, well, the start of Dave Jones, was you kind of bookended it, I think.
yeah. So yeah, there was definitely games that I went to, probably sort of in between Dave Jones and McCarthy era, you'd say, because they're probably the
Yeah.
two sort of standout eras. There was definitely games that I went to there, but probably none that are obviously super memorable.
Hmm.
But and obviously I always kept an eye, a very keen eye on when we were in the Premier League under McCarthy, and obviously remember a lot of the games when we were in the Championship. But I probably wouldn't say that I closely followed Wolves properly because I didn't get a season ticket until we'd got relegated from the Premier League. So
Okay.
my first season ticket was under Solbakken, so that was, I mean, a bit of a
Oh, a
reality check
wonderful
anyway.
time.
Yeah. So like I say, on the Facebook memories and stuff, it's obviously that I was keeping up to date with scores and watching games and stuff, but to actually go into games and sitting down and actually sort of doing what I do now, watching the games very with insight, I probably didn't do that up until about 10 years ago, I'd say. But still very much been a Wolves fan, throughout my life really. But it's probably been the last sort of 10 years where I've taken football a little bit more seriously, I'd say.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, it's less sort of nostalgic, I guess, because it's in relatively recent history. But who were sort of your players growing up then in that, you know, McCarthy slash Jacket era for yourself then?
Yeah. Well, the McCarthy era, it's always weird because whenever someone has asked me or asks me now who my favourite player is, I can never pinpoint one certain player that has. Oh, it's always been him. But Ebanks Blake was one back then, which
Yeah.
I loved, and you look back at some of his goals now, they were great. Yeah, I'd probably say Ebanks. I had a weird soft spot for Chris Uwalimo as well under McCarthy. That was
Yeah.
one of those, but he's a good player for the Wolves as well. But yeah, Jacket was sort of the era really where I was really into it. So the likes of I had a sort of love-hate relationship with Sacco, probably similar to how people do with Adama now as well.
I can
Um,
see that. Yeah.
I
Because
remember
I
in the
think,
Championship, there were some games where he genuinely wouldn't do anything, but I think I appreciated it more when in League One when he's firing because I always said to people, Saka could do nothing for 80 minutes, but you knew as soon as he got the ball and we needed something, he'd get it. But I think it's similar to Adama now. I think, a lot of people, some people love him because he can run past players and all sorts, but a lot of people don't like him because obviously the lack of end products. But Saka was always a good one, but there's loads of players because since then, we've done quite well as a club. So I think there's so many players that you can pick out that everyone's going to love from every squad that we've had, really.
Yeah, there is that sort of case. Over the last 10 years, we did we tried to do like a best Wolves team of the decade, and it was the starting 11 at the moment. Well,
yeah, exactly.
It's like, and you go, well, okay, great. But with Sacco, I think it's easy to forget that because we've had, obviously this abundance of top quality football players. He was so much better than the rest of the team. And you're right, he didn't do anything for like 80 minutes, but he could score the winner. And, he was a proper crowd pleaser when he wanted to be.
Yeah, if you picked out those number of years as well, like maybe a couple of years from that sort of championship season we went down to sort of the championship season under Jacket where we sort of finished 7th or whatever, all of our sort of best goals would have been or included Sacco because he was just so pivotal in those. Like there was obviously a lot of the long ranges and some of the goals like Bristol City, I think, where not Bristol City, Brentford, where Michael Jacobs scored, included Sacco on the left hand side as well. So there were just so many moments that I picked him out. So yeah, like I said, I think definitely that first championship season when we went down, he was almost our best player that season as well. And I was just not sure about him. But the fact that he stayed fairly loyal to us for another couple of years at least, I think he could have jumped definitely after that first season we went down. I think shows how good a character and how good a player he was, really.
No, definitely. And I think it's interesting about that, I guess, the second relegation season, that in theory, he should have been like head and shoulders above everyone, even if we got relegated, if we were, I guess, a smaller team. It's going to sound slightly arrogant, but if we were one of those smaller teams and it was clear he was trying his best but just couldn't quite do it. But the fact that the club was sort of so toxic at that point, it was crazy. You say you were going like, well, yeah, he's good, but I don't like him. Yeah, and it sounds so bitter to say, doesn't it? I know. It really shouldn't. It really shouldn't. I mean, sort of going forward then. So, you sort of started sporting about sort of 10 years ago and getting actively sort of, I guess, involved in the following. Sort of, how's your match day routine sort of changed from, I guess, sort of regularly going to games at that point to, well, I guess literally a year ago now, and I guess sort of involving some of the stuff you're currently doing?
Yeah, so back then, I probably would have been getting the bus to games, I'd assume, maybe. Yeah, because I obviously wouldn't have been working there. I was at school, so I was probably getting the bus up to town. Back then, I used to get the bus up to town, probably have a McDonald's, and then sort of walk to the ground. So I was under 18, wasn't going to the pubs or anything back then, but sort of, get the bus up, grab something to eat, and then walk down and meet my mates at the ground. And sort of as the years went on, started working. I normally work every Saturday anyway, so sort of finish work about 2 and now drive up. Park up and just walk straight to the ground. So I don't really get a chance to do sort of the pub side or the pre-match side that a lot of my friends do. So I sort of finish work and get to the ground and meet my mates. It's a bit boring, really. But when I get a chance and when it's a Sunday game or whatever, and I can spend a couple of hours beforehand chatting to my mates or other people, then that's perfect. I think it was maybe Burnley last season. It was absolutely roasting, and I think it was like a 2 p.m. kickoff or something. I got into town for about 12 because the weather was tremendous, really. So I wish I would be able to do stuff like that more. But with our season last season as well, every other game was sort of Friday night, Monday night. You get a couple of Sunday afternoons, so it's a bit all over the place, really. But obviously, sort of like you were saying before we started recording, now it's just sort of get through your day, sit down, put the TV on, and that's it. So hopefully we get back to some sort of normality soon anyway.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I was going to say, incidentally, this is sort of something I sort of picked up speaking to Finners last week, and it reminded me of something. When you're a kid going to games on the bus, because to be fair, I did the same thing. What time did you like to get into the ground? Because I needed to get in early. I don't know what it was.
Early all the time.
Yeah,
I was mad at I would like the first season we did it. To be fair, the first season when we were in the championship, that one under Solbakken. I do remember me getting to games sometimes quite late, as in walking into the ground and they were about to kick off. But definitely when me and my mates moved to North Bank for a little bit, I could have been there sometimes. If it was a 3 p.m. kickoff, I was there just after 2. Like, I don't know why. I just did that a lot. But yeah, whenever I got the bus, I think you always want to be cautious as well. You'd rather be a little bit early than too late, wouldn't you? So I was there watching them. Sometimes I was there before they'd even come out for their warm up as well.
Oh yeah, no, that was it. I wanted to be there before, like, in time to see the warm up. And in hindsight, I have no idea what possessed me to sort of try and do it. But I know it seems to be an interesting thing I've picked up, that people on the when you start going to games or when you're younger, I guess it's because it's literally just more football, whereas you now realize it's pretty boring just watching them sort of jog up and
just
down.
Do the same thing every week now as well, don't they? So it's not like you see anything new.
No, exactly. So for yourself, then we'll kind of do a couple of highs, lows, notable moments for yourself. Good, bad, and the ugly. So you actually got an interesting sort of slightly short of being over the last decade, but what are the sort of standout moments for yourself? It doesn't necessarily have to be, quarterfinal, Man U, or even your, whether it's sentimental ones, you pick.
Yeah, probably. I mean, the Man U one is one that I think a lot of fans will bring up, and obviously it was sort of the anniversary of that the other day, and just sort of looking back at that, I remember at the time sort of being there at the ground, and we'd gone 2-0 up, and I was looking at my mate, I was like, we're actually going to Wembley, like, it's absolutely mad. And the atmosphere that day was just ridiculous as well, and always nice to sort of watch back those highlights and so on. But there's a few really, sort of more notably over the last couple of seasons, really. Getting some big wins against teams like Man City away, Spurs away, at their place and at Wembley. It was both. The Wembley one was a bit weird. I think the Wolves atmosphere was pretty good, but because the rest of the ground was sort of half empty, it was a little bit strange, really. But the one at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium was pretty good last season, right before sort of the season was paused. But actually being able to go to Europe, the opportunity to go to Europe was, it's mental. I still can't believe, us as a club we were even there. And I remember saying sort of the start of last season, if we do quite well, I want to try and do as many as I can, because genuinely you don't know when Wolves are going to be in European competition again, or when we're going to go abroad again. So I was lucky enough to do, I think, 3 European away days, which was pretty good. So I mean, one of them was Crusaders, so I'm not sure if you can count that one, but But
did you get a plane then?
I got the plane. That was a weird one, because obviously the game was the Thursday. I flew on the Thursday morning, and I was back at work on the Friday morning. So that was really, I was almost on the motorway, almost falling. To be fair, I got the flight back on the Friday morning at like 6:30. And I was almost like, half asleep on the motorway driving back to work. It was really weird experience that was.
I do not envy it. I'm guessing, did you do the Portugal and Espanyol then for the other two?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, so Braga we actually stayed in Porto for that one, and then obviously sort of got the train to Braga. The weather was atrocious for that one. It was a shame, really, because I think if the weather was dry and the police weren't so brutal, I think it would have been a very memorable game. And the Espanyol one was good, because I mean there was no pressure on it, really. We'd smashed them at Molineux. We were more or less already through. So that one was just a bit more chilled out. I really enjoyed that. Again, the atmosphere was pretty good, and the ones that I tried to go to, I looked at obviously Olympiacos, which fans couldn't go to anyway, and Besiktas was the other one. I was toying with that one a lot, and I didn't do it in the end, which I sort of, obviously now I wish I did, but to still have the opportunity to go to sort of 3 games, I'm very, very, very happy to have done so, really.
No, definitely. I think it's something, hopefully it's, European fixtures just become a staple in our calendar. But it'll be interesting sort of seeing 5-10 years time, whether sort of it. I know last season, it was a first for many, so it's still going to sort of hold that sort of special place. But if we somehow, touch wood, end up in the Champions League in 2 years' time, which I doubt, but that's another thing for another day. And we're playing at the San Siro or Nou Camp, whether but Besiktas away one will mean as much. I guess
Yeah,
I kind of hope it does. Or even like when that Torino game, when we beat them in that in the I was going to say the playoffs in the qualifiers.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
think it's
I think so. I bet there's probably loads of fans like teams even like United and stuff. They probably look back to, there's be fans that went to games this season or last season, but still look back in at 4 or 5 years ago probably to pick out a number of games. So I think fingers crossed, like you say, if European football comes a bit more regular for Wolves, I think that will be fantastic. And I think we've been to some great grounds and grounds we probably didn't expect to
yeah.
go to, but I think we all know like we want to be going to the Bernabéus, the new camps, the San Siros, just for that experience to see Wolves play there. That would be amazing.
Definitely. I think last season we probably got just about the right balance of going to good recognised clubs.
Yeah,
But it and good stadiums. It would have been lovely to have, let's say, gone to Amsterdam or PSV, and
yeah,
or even Seville. If we'd have
yeah.
somehow played them at their ground or something like that, which is sort of a friend of mine who'd sort of been going to sort of quite a few of the away ones. He didn't go to the Espanyol away one and he kicked himself in hindsight with, everything that's happened in the last year. But it was with we're going to beat them. They're 17th in the table.
Yeah.
I'd rather save my annual leave and my money for a bigger game, which obviously
exactly.
didn't come. And that's sort of a bit of a killer with the with the pandemic, but literally nothing we can do about that. So we talked about the highs. What about the low ones for yourself? Or maybe it's just like a little game or something like that. Or I know sort of about the sort of Jacket third season under him where it sort of got very drab very quickly.
Yeah, there's a couple. Like I say, I think I personally have been fairly fortunate with sort of the spell that I've been supporting the club. There's probably a number of fans that have sort of seen us. Unfortunately, bottle promotion under Dave Jones the year before we get promoted, and all the 80s and 90s or whatever. But for me, I think I've been fairly fortunate. But there's still some. Like I went to the game against Brighton when we got relegated under Dean Saunders.
Ooh, yeah.
It was weird because even back then I just was so optimistic going into every game. Like we weren't actually mathematically relegated. I think we needed to win and hope results went our way.
Yeah.
And I went to Brighton still thinking, we're going to stay up. But because our team was that strong, I just couldn't believe we were even in the bottom three. And obviously we lost. And the Brighton fans are really, really good that game. And obviously the thing with O'Hara and Roger Johnson and all sorts. And I don't think until sort of a few years after I sort of realised how sort of bad that was. I think at the time it sort of just went all over my head. And then the most notable one, probably more recently, is the FA Cup semi-final as well. So like for the high of the quarter against United, and then to go there, even at 2-0 up, I think, it was probably half the Wolves fans rubbing their hands together and the other half thinking, no, there's still a lot of time left in this game for Watford to make something happen. And when the first goal went in, and then the penalty, I think it was as well, I couldn't believe it really, which was such a shame. But I'm not a big fan of sort of travelling into London for games anyway, so the travel back into Wolverhampton was painful. But it was a shame really. But I think you look at it, City had such a good team that year as well. Would we have gone to the final and won? Who knows? But that was probably the most painful moment I'd say in recent times.
Yeah, it's weird sort of thinking back to the semi-final game, because I guess sort of both teams do, but I just assumed Wolves would win. Yeah, I was just like, but we're playing in a big competition. We're going to win. It was similar to how sort of felt, I guess, for the playoff final back in 2003, and it was just like, well, we're 2-0 up now, and as soon as they got that first goal, I knew we weren't going to win. And everyone went, oh no, but yeah, and it took me ages to sort of reconcile the fact that there's always going to be a winner and a loser, and it's for us, it was just like, well, we're losing side this time, and it's kind of quite hard, especially when you don't play in those notable elimination games, so to speak. We don't experience it very often. Say like Man United, did they get to 3 semi-finals last year or something silly? I'm sure they kind of came effectively fourth place in the league and 3 cups, and you go, well, don't get me wrong, that'd be crushing to see Wolves do that, but they play at such a high level. They sort of
Just used
used
it now,
to
yeah.
winning and losing at a high stakes game, whereas for me it was just like, oh great, and you say that journey back was just awful.
Yeah, it was big. Well, you know, in cups, really, we haven't done that well anyway. So that the fact that Nuno sort of got us that far, like in my lifetime, me actually remembering an FA Cup semi-final was sort of, you know, watching Wolves day in day out. Like that was the first for me. And obviously the fact actually seeing Wolves in a proper game at Wembley, because we played Spurs there, but it just didn't feel the same. But then like it just went so quick, and like 2-0 up, then at 2-1. And I remember when Dendoncker lunged in, I sort of just looked to the skies and I thought, like, nah, how has this happened? And I remember it was obviously John Ruddy and goal. I think Deeney took the pen. There was a guy behind me who was like, yeah, oh. So like when he's like as if we'd saved the pen, and I was just looking at this guy, what are you doing, mate? Like you got my hopes up then. But yeah, that was just like you said, I booked the wrong trains as well. Cause I found obviously everyone was booking trains at the same time. Whatever, the price is shut up. And I booked a train thinking, right, that is such a good price. Then realised it was like half an hour after the full-time whistle. So I thought, if it goes to extra time, or me actually trying to get back from Wembley to Euston in half an hour is never going to happen. But in the end, it was that busy. I don't think they checked tickets or anything like that, so I was all right in the end. But yeah, that was a long journey home as well, really long journey.
I mean, I remember I took the coach that day, and it's when you get the coach travel, it takes ages to actually leave.
Yeah.
So then you're then stuck with a. I went by myself and met people at the ground, and we all sort of sorted out travel separately. And I was just sitting with a you know, in a compact place full of strangers, all in a pissed off mood. And it's like the last thing you want to do is spark up a conversation and stuff like that. And I guess it sort of brings us round to modern, I guess, sort of 2021, really. So I guess one of the things sort of most known for yourself is sort of Football Manager. And sort of I know sort of you've been a researcher for them for a while, and you stream playing as well. I guess sort of what kind of came first to yourself? How did it all sort of come about, the whole sort of Football Manager thing? Because it was something I loved playing. I still do.
Yeah. When I was a lot younger, my first FM was sort of 2007, and there was somebody at the time that it was a family friend who was a bit older than obviously I was, and he was playing Wolves Club Manager, and I think it was actually one of my friends at primary school played it as well. And when I spoke to this person about the game, I thought, like, that is so good, like I've got to get on that. And I remember telling my dad, I want to get this game, and I remember they used to sell it at the Wolves Club shop. So I went to the club shop, and they'd stopped doing that Club Manager, but they had Football Manager there. So I bought it, actually, the first one I bought from the Wolves Club shop. Got home, and again, I probably had every FM, but probably up until like 2011 version, I probably didn't play it how you would, or probably take it too seriously. So I played it for 3 or 4 years, not having really a clue what was going on, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was just signing players from like non-league just because I saw they were born in Telford or whatever, or Wolverhampton, like all sorts of rubbish, really.
I signed DJ Campbell when he was at like I think it was Wealdstone. Before, when he was still like non-league, and they had that cup run, and just I think it was like before he signed for, I want to say, Blues, and his potential and stuff like that was awful. But I was like, yeah, but I've seen him score.
I did that a lot. I used to watch like FA Cup highlights. I think there used to be a program on Channel 4 called Golissimo on like a Saturday morning.
Yes.
And just did a roundup of all the European goals.
games. Yeah.
And I used to watch that and like just pick out players on there and search them. If I could get them, I'd get them. So just stuff like that, really. I didn't play the game properly at all, probably until sort of, like I say, like 2011, 2012. It's just gone from there, really. I think I started making YouTube content on it roughly around 2015, I'd say.
Okay.
And that's gone from there, really. And a few years ago, probably about 4 years ago now, Football Manager was sort of advertising for researchers. So that's basically people that just help input stats and attributes into the game. Because they've got head researchers, but these people aren't going to be watching every Wolves game in such detail. So I sort of registered my interest, and at the time there was already a researcher for Wolves, and they were pretty happy with how he was doing. So I thought fair enough. And then I think it was 3 years ago, they probably 2 or 3 years ago, they approached me and just said, like, the guy's sort of leaving at the end of the season. Do you want to get involved? And I thought, yeah, sound. So it's not like a full-time thing. It's sort of just something on the side, really. But it's really enjoyable to do. And I've been lucky enough, due to my content, to sort of being invited to a lot of Football Manager events at their studios, and been able, when they released the game on Nintendo Switch, I was one of the first people to play that, so I could put the content out on that as well. So been very fortunate with it, really. But mainly sort of looking at the Wolves side of things now, and I don't think it changes the way I watch the games as such, but I'm watching a lot more of the under-23s and stuff like that now, and sort of just seeing how a lot more of them get on, really. But it all sort of goes hand in hand with the Talking Wolves stuff, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly. It goes hand in hand with that stuff, really, because a lot of the stuff that I'm posting on Talking Wolves or reading because of Talking Wolves, I know now I can put into Football Manager as well. Just like random loan moves to, for some of our 23s players to China or whatever. Just like, it's quite easy to sort of be clued up on that, really. But yeah, it's something that's really enjoyable.
I'll say it's absolutely a couple of interesting things that I think Football Manager have really done well on. Firstly, is having fans. I remember listening to a interview with Miles, Football Manager, about it, saying, well, when it came to the stats at the start, they relied on fanzines, and it was because they know that if you're doing a fanzine, we're in sort of 2021 now, so it's literally things like Fancast, Talking Wolves, but you've kind of got to have some level of balance, because if you give Neves 20 out of 20 for shooting,
exactly,
or long distance shots, they're going to go, he's good, but everyone's scored a long range shot. He's done it a few more times, don't get me wrong. And I thought that seems to be something quite interesting, I guess.
Yeah, I think you have to be pretty sort of realistic and fair with it. Like I said, there is a head researcher for the Premier League, so it's not like I could just input all this stuff and it'll get approved straight away. Like, he'll read it all through, and a lot of what they do is normally sort of balance it out between other Premier League players of possibly similar quality or whatever. So, you might look at Neves and he might compare a said attribute with someone like, a random example like Tillemans or someone like that, and just or sort of judge it against, if I'm putting attributes for Neves better than Kevin De Bruyne, for argument's sake, like, there's got to be some sort of balance, and they're pretty good with it. A lot of them, it'll be constructive. So, like, stuff with Pedro Neto, I did in January. Obviously, there's a January update. And for Wolves, because it's been a bit of a nothing season, I'd say, there wasn't many changes I could make of note, but Neto was obviously one of them. And there were just little bits I changed. I've changed his potential, and the researcher thought it might have been a little bit too high. So I set it at a certain level, but hopefully in the summer I'll be able to nudge that back up so he becomes slightly better in the game.
No, definitely. I was going to say, the other thing that was interesting is in some of the Football Managers, I guess it's got a fantastic reputation for, in a positive way, but also sometimes negative, is you're saying sort of concentrating on the under 23 players and the development players, because they almost have cornered it, that they can almost spot a player. Or, well, I say they can, well, literally it's you. And sometimes there's good ones that come out of it. I think Danny Murphy was the first, way back in the day on Champman. Obviously you've got the notable Cherno Sambas of the world and Freddie Adu's as well. It's interesting to sort of say that you've taken, I guess, sort of a lot of focus on, the development players, and sort of seeing, what they could do in future, whether it's for Wolves or otherwise.
Yeah, well, one of the toughest things is, like I said, I've tried to watch them all, but I'm still not being able, because some games aren't even broadcast. I'm still not able to watch every minute of every game for the 23s. So it's quite hard, and it's annoying for me personally, because a lot of our lads, like you've seen, are going out on loan, and I'm sending these players out on loan to teams. I'm saying me as if I'm sort of brokering the deals. Like, I'm putting these players on loan for a Football Manager without actually having many attributes in there because I can't judge a player. So what they'll normally do, if I leave everything blank, I'll give them like a current ability, roughly, what level they're playing at, and the game will just sort of randomise attributes to fit that really. But for me, I always I would never want to transfer a player to another club with like none of my knowledge in there. I'd still like to have some sort of thoughts in there. So the players like Otasawi I was able to do a little bit more of at the start of the season. Corbianu, Marquez, obviously, the players that played for the 23s quite regularly, and I was watching a bit at the start of the season. But a lot of the under 18s now, they're calling up players from the under 16s. Same with the 23s. A lot of them are under 18s players now. So it is quite difficult to judge. And what level you judge that as well. I think the best time to judge them properly is when they're playing first team football league. 23s, it's such a strange level. You don't really know who they're playing up against. So it's quite difficult to judge that really.
No, definitely. And I think we kind of, people let's say like Dion Sanderson, who have now kind of had 12 months essentially, at Championship League One level. He had that sort of pre-season for a sort of start of last season. Everyone kind of went, okay, he seems to have a bit about him. But he's someone who's probably, I guess, had that chance to highlight those skills more and more and more.
Yeah, definitely. Again, he was another one, he was pretty well kitted out on FM, but again, he probably didn't have everything ironed out as it should be. But there were times where, with the 23s, they weren't even showing games back then, really. You had to go to games, and sometimes going to Telford or wherever they were playing on a Monday night or whatever is a bit difficult. But yeah, now he's had 2 good loan spells at 2 pretty, established clubs. I think, he'll come back, and just in general, I think in football, it'll be interesting to see where he goes next season or if he stays at Wolves.
So I was going to say, sort of, I'll go a bit sort of nonsensical because, well, we're on the Fancast and we like to do it sometimes. So on Football Manager, I guess what's been your crowning achievement on there, and do you always play as Wolves, or do you like to mix it up? Because I know sort of you do your own running sort of games that you stream as well.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of a running joke in the community, the Football Manager community, that I always do Wolves. But I'm pretty last year I don't think I did a proper sort of Wolves save off the top of my head. I would have managed them at some point, but not sort of in depth. I think I did 1 season with them last season. I did quite well, but this year with Wolves, I've absolutely smashed it. Like the best. I'd never won the Premier League. I never won the Champions League with Wolves until this season, and I won 5 trophies in 1 season, and that was like Christmas. I'd smashed through it. So yeah, I'd won, I think, the Premier League, League Cup, FA Cup, Super Cup, Champions League. That was a nice season, and just having people come in my streams saying like, "How on earth have you got these players?" I had like Haaland and stuff up front, So that was my best Wolves achievement. Last year I did the Pentagon Challenge. I completed that, which is to win. You start with nothing, basically unemployed, no coaching qualifications, and you have to win the 5 Champions Leagues around the world. So I managed to do that last season, which was, I didn't start that till about Christmas last year, or the year before now actually, and I was actually on holiday around Christmas, and I just got my laptop out. I was on like a bus transfer, joined some 3rd division Chinese team, and it all started there. But that was a big achievement really, starting from absolutely nothing to win all 5 Champions Leagues. So that was a big FM achievement.
Okay, I remember sort of mine would have been back in maybe sort of 2010, 11-ish, and I managed to win Bundesliga with Schalke, and had the signing of the season, which was Carl Henry for £1 million. And again, I look back and go like, I was taking it a bit seriously. I was having a look on sort of online sort of tips on just little ways how you can sort of do things a bit better instead of just randomly going for it. And at the time it was like, no, shouldn't sign Carl Henry. Why are you doing this? You do not need a defensive midfielder. I used to love doing England.
Stuff like that. Just signing. I used to do that. Like even if I was managing like Liverpool or something, like, so I do need a backup striker. I'll get Ebanks Blake in on loan, or sign Ebanks Blake. Like back in like 2009, 2010, everyone was like, "What are you doing?" So like, just a backup Champions League striker. We'll get Ebanks Blake in. Yeah, no problem.
Exactly. It's good to look. It's good to look at home on ones like that. I found. I mean, I've had my fingers burnt slightly too many times, and there were points where if I wasn't playing as Wolves, and I'd sort of go, ooh, I'd do the scouting report. I'd literally get a scouting report of every player, and then it would be like, yeah, they've got about 2.5 stars, and I go, No, they don't.
Yeah.
Also, no, he doesn't.
Yeah.
That's my team. How dare
Way
they?
better than that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess sort of following on from, I guess sort of streaming on Football Manager, it then sort of progressed into sort of talking Wolves to yourself. Is that sort of how sort of the timeline worked? Was it about the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
same time?
I'd say obviously I did the YouTube stuff. I was doing predominantly Football Manager. Started going into a little bit of real life stuff, and I actually did a bit of vlogging. Actually, Wolves vlogging on my own channel. So I'd probably say I started a very similar time to when Finners did, like doing the vlogging stuff. I'd say he's progressed much better than I have, and it just got to a point with me like I was doing games and it was. It was alright, but I very rarely spoken. I'd do an intro, and then the rest was just like corners being taken next to me or whatever, But people weirdly seemed to enjoy it, and there was people from like Australia and stuff commented saying like, "I appreciate you doing this because like it's the next best thing to actually sort of being at the game." So I did that, and it started doing quite well. And obviously the sort of the season under Nuno when we got promoted, there were some big games like beating Villa and Sheffield United at home. They were quite popular. And it was weird because there was a couple of obviously younger fans that sort of sat near me, sort of knowing what I was doing because they'd obviously seen the videos. So there's sometimes like people trying to wave or whatever on the videos and stuff like that. And I had a couple of fans like approach me after games and stuff. But it got to a point because I'd moved, like I said earlier, I was in the North Bank. I moved to the South Bank, and I think I did a sort of season of vlogging there. And then it got to a point where, like, I didn't mind. There was people moaning, as always. People moan at everything. There were people moaning about the whole vlogging thing, saying like, "Why, you're not even watching the game." I thought, like, I'm holding the camera there, and my eyes are literally on the game there, so I'm still watching the game. But I sort of got to a point where I wasn't. Not that I wasn't enjoying the games anymore, but whenever we got a free kick, I was more concerned about getting my phone out to record it and actually being bothered about it. So I thought I'd sort of leave that. And I was in the South Bank anyway. It's not like I could, put my phone up there and start talking. It just sort of wasn't that sort of thing. So whenever I wasn't doing that, I remember it was probably it was a few years ago now. I started doing match reviews on my own channel as well. So just doing reviews of the games, and they started being quite popular as well. Probably getting a couple of thousand hits on some of those, and that was way more than my Football Manager stuff was getting. So it got to a point, I think it was around a Christmas time, there was a guy that who was pretty well respected on Twitter, who sort of spoke to him every now and then. He says, I've seen your stuff and you should maybe look at doing a Wolves sort of group channel. And obviously I think the main intention or the main sort of idea was for a Wolves type channel, a bit like Arsenal Fan TV, but obviously I didn't want it to be that way, like sort of controversial or whatever. So I thought, it's a good idea, and I sort of sat on it for a couple of months. And then I thought, right, I need to get this going before the end of the season, because this was the promotion season. I need to get this going before in the Premier League, set some sort of foundations down, and then go for it during the Prem. So I approached a few people. So I approached Tom Rouse, who's the old Gold and Black now on YouTube, because I'd done stuff with him before. And I valued his sort of content and his opinion. Finners was another one I approached, again because he had a decent base, and I got on very well with Finn. And then Ewan EAB Skills was another one, because sort of, again, I knew he was a big Wolves fan, spoke to him every now and then. So they were the first three that I'd approached, and we had a chat about it and stuff like that, and sort of had our plans in place. And then obviously Matt Cooper, who's part of it now, sort of approached me. I think he'd just sort of finished uni and just said, like, I've seen this talking Wolves, so I'd be very interested to get involved in it if I can. So spoke to Matt really, and he's sort of, as time's gone on, sort of taken a bit more of a role in it, to be fair. Sort of me and him basically now sort of found it, basically, run it sort of thing. So I run all the social media side and YouTube side, and Matt predominantly does sort of the website sort of stuff, like blogs and stuff like that. So yeah, we started it in that championship season. First few weeks we did the old, the microphones outside the ground sort of thing, and that it did okay. I mean, we got some seriously weird looks outside the ground, to be fair. The more annoying thing back then was a lot of it was evening games, so the lighting wasn't great, the videos weren't fantastic, but I was fairly happy for a brand new channel, like with the viewership we were getting, and the actual quality the videos were coming out at. And we're just doing the same old previews and reviews sort of thing. And then it just slowly, I don't know if there's anywhere that it's just sort of been a boom or where sort of things just shot up, but I think it's just been a gradual rise over, I think it's just over 3 years now. But I always like doing the transfer videos, stuff like that, because, you know, it's fairly easy content to make, but it's like people seem to love it really. But, you know, although I sort of tweet any transfer rumours I see, somehow people think I'm in the know sometimes. So, you know, I've got to be a bit careful with, you know, how I say things or what I say. So, yeah, so I always put reportedly on it, so it's not like it's coming out of my mouth. But yeah, it's really enjoyable, and now that's sort of taken all the focus off my own personal Football Manager channel, really, and I put all the eggs into the Talking Wolves basket, to be honest. And, you know, I've had opportunities, I've done stuff with Wolves, which, you know, has been great. So, you know, they got me to sort of do a commentary on a Villa game, which we lost 4-1 in the end. Again, that popped up on my timeline the other day, which, you know, exactly. And just little partnerships and stuff with people and places that I don't think I would have ever done if I hadn't sort of started this sort of thing. So for something, once again, as it's not a full-time job, just as a hobby, it's something that obviously I really enjoy doing.
No, definitely. I mean, you're preaching somewhat to the converted on a show like this, and, you know, we've been doing it for, you know, a bit longer. But
yeah,
you know, the doors it opens and the people you sort of meet from it, and
100%,
you know,
yeah.
it's people you don't even sort of expect to meet in a way. You know, one of the things that sort of I've said sort of before that I'm most proud of in the Fancast, that and sort of you, by the sounds that you sort of had it bits with your vlog as well, is for foreign listeners and viewers. And that, you know, when we've had people sort of come over to the game, have been following us, I'll give them a little shout out, but, you know, like Todd DeWitt, and we'll be like, yeah, I'm just gonna have holiday in Wolverhampton and Birmingham.
Yeah.
What the hell, Todd?
Strange,
and you know, yeah, we're staying on the Tetnall Road. It's like, okay, wow, okay, but we'll do a couple of days in London, and but you know, actually, you know, seeing them after a game, learning about, you know, what it's like being in Colorado or Texas or Washington and stuff like that. It's just been fascinating. Sort of, you know, that's on, I guess, sort of a viewing level, but even the ones not, I was going to say professionally, like, don't get paid for this, but you know, through like little partnerships and stuff like that, you know, I wouldn't dream of, you know, being able to go to corporate games. And, you know, we've been really fortunate that, you know, every so often someone would sort of pop along and say, hi, do you fancy coming to this? And like, this is just not a world I'm used to.
It's mad though, because there's people, like you say, sort of the foreign listeners, that if it wasn't for podcasts or YouTube channels or whatever, the chances are they wouldn't even care about Wolves. Like, it's actually the fans that are sort of driving these people towards the club. Like, you know, yes, they may have an interest in Wolves, but the fact that there's other fans out there talking about Wolves or making content about Wolves, you know, are bringing more people closer to the club. And I hope soon, I know I've spoken to the club about it before, because I think the club could get a lot of people like ourselves, you know, more involved in that sort of side of things. And, you know, they've said, yeah, we will. And, you know, I think they do have to be careful about it. And I'm sure you've probably had conversations with people about it before as well. I understand, you know, with Fosun especially, you know, it's been quite difficult because they like to keep a lot of things under wraps. And, you know, I would love for someday sort of that sort of the content creation side of Wolves and the actual sort of club itself to sort of go hand in hand for maybe a couple of projects a season. But yeah, like you say, just there was stuff like when we started up Talking Wolves, and like, you know, I remember yourselves, the Fancast followed us quite quickly. I was like, oh wow, okay. And then like Jackie Oatley followed us. I was like, right. So it's just like, you know, Jackie Oatley, who, you know, had seen on BBC and ITV or whatever, dropped us a follow very quickly. I was like, that is crazy. And I remember we tried to get her on for an interview, and she was like, well, I'm actually going to the World Cup next week. I was like, that is mad, isn't it?
That's a baller move. Yeah.
But yeah, it's mad. Sort of something that we just sort of do for fun and do for a hobby. The impact that it has, just not on ourselves, but other fans as well, is fantastic. You know, when sometimes it can, you know, we lose a game, it's like, oh, we have to do another video, do another podcast now. But like, you know, when you sit back and sort of appreciate it, it's class, really.
Yeah, I was going to say I completely agree with the club side of things, and it's interesting. You know, I'll try not to sort of pull out the club too much and burn bridges for later. But you know, it was interesting that the Fancast really took off, or it really kind of, I think, stepped up when we were in League One, and the bridge between fans and the club was at its worst, and the club either consciously or subconsciously did lean on us a bit. To they retweeted sometimes, sent a gif and stuff like that, and that did sort of quietly stop. And a lot of their interactions on social media with fans have just
quieted down a lot, hasn't it? Yeah.
And I can see why they do it, why they've done it, but I think there are lots of I guess sort of I was going to say content producing a sort of slightly different step, but what they're doing with some fantastic graphic designers and artists at the moment, and how they're sort of managing to incorporate that into the club culture. It is difficult, I guess, to do it with the likes of ourselves, but it would be nice to sort of somehow do something. But saying that under Fosun, it would it was under Fosun and under Dalrymple. We kind of got quietly approached to sort of sit on the fan experience stuff and things like that. And sometimes it's a bit being in the right place at the right time with some of these. But I definitely think the club could do a lot, because there are so many YouTube channels, podcasts now that we're all doing something slightly different in how we're doing it, but we're all kind of why we're doing it. It's the same. It's just sharing our love of Wolves, really.
Yeah, I mean, I've got conversations with some people that work at Wolves in the media team. So I'm not expecting them to say, especially in the sort of situation we're in now, Dave, can you come down Molyneux tomorrow and we'll do a video or whatever. I'm not expecting that sort of thing, but I think there's definitely scope for it. And like you say, there's lots of people. I think the one thing they are cautious of, probably on not upsetting people as well, because like you say, there's so many people out there now that are good quality. It's not like there's only two or three standout people. There are a lot of decent content creators out there at the moment. So but I think down the line I would love to see them do that. They're getting a lot of these. They're actually employing a lot of people to do presenting and stuff like that, which is fair enough. But I think one-off videos with players or whatever would be great. And I think people would enjoy it. There'd be Fancast listeners or viewers of the YouTube stuff or whatever that, would watch that. And I think you draw in extra viewers because of that as well. So, I mean, we could talk about this for ages. But, yeah, I think hopefully, sometime soon that is something that we can look at. But, as a whole, the opportunities that it's brought have been fantastic, really.
No, I can completely see that. I guess sort of rounding up sort of YouTube kind of content as a whole, really. I mean, it's something that from the Fancast that we're doing this on the StreamYards at the moment, so we can sort of drop it on YouTube straight away and things like that. But it's sort of something we've started actively doing a bit more this year compared to sort of just mainly doing audio. And it's something I didn't quite appreciate, say, sort of how many people were doing it in sort of slightly different ways, from, say, people just doing previews, reviews, to sort of a vlog side and sort of kind of everything in between, really. And that, I didn't quite appreciate, I guess, the whole medium, really.
Yeah, it's huge, especially this season. It's really taken off. I think there's a couple of groups and a couple of channels that have sort of seeing what's happening at the moment and sort of want to still sort of talk about Wolves a lot more. So obviously, off the top of my head at the moment, I think there's probably 6 or 7 channels that I can remember I know now of. Obviously, sort of doing the stuff that sort of talking Wolves are doing the reviews and stuff. Obviously, there's ourselves. Obviously, Dazzling Dave does Wondering Wolf, who's a new one with Mark Rhodes from BBC. Wondering About Wolves, who's a sort of a younger fan with a dad as well. So there's a lot out there. I think there's probably obviously Finn as well, who does the vlogging. So it's become very, very popular, and it'll be interesting to see sort of where it takes off, if people sort of give that up after lockdown or carry it on. But it's good to see so many fans out there. There are a few. I think, I'm not looking. There's channels there that I don't. I mean, I'm not saying I religiously watch every video of all of them, but all the channels that are out there at the moment do good content. There's not anyone that has sort of come out and I'm thinking I have to turn it off straight away because it's that bad. Like, everyone is doing good content, and I think with Wolves at the moment, like, everyone's opinion is slightly different. So I think it's great. It's a good place to be in at the moment, the Wolves YouTube.
No, definitely, and I think you're completely right about not wanting to sort of just turn it off straight away and things like that. And definitely sort of on the opinion side of things, it's a sort of slightly civil war at the moment, and that's actually sort of quite a nice a bridging point for us to sort of now we kind of caught up with everything in terms of. I appreciate we can kind of go to Talking Wolves YouTube account to find out, but how are you finding Wolves at the moment? Are you Nuno in, Nuno out? How apathetic, really, I guess, are you, or sympathetic are you for the whole sort of situation at the moment?
It is mad that is even a question, but it genuinely is. And when I speak to people that aren't Wolves fans about it, they just can't believe that we're even sort of contemplating or talking about Nuno leaving the club. I'm very much sort of Nuno in. I can appreciate and sort of understand some people that sort of want to see the club go in a slightly different direction, but I'm very much sort of I want Nuno to stay. I don't, I think as long as we don't go down, which I don't think we're going to. I can sort of understand this difficult situation he's been in personally and for the club as well this season. So I think as long as there's not like a repeat of this next season in terms of performances, I think if we were playing attacking football and taking the game, taking the game to teams, and we're still sort of sat here, I think people would possibly, sort of slightly more understand it because the football's a bit more attractive. But I think he's got to make sure next season we do improve quite rapidly. But I'm very much Nuno in. I think at the time, especially when people wanted him out, was it like sort of mid-January? I don't think there was anybody out there, that could improve the club straight away or improve our position as a club. So, I'm just hoping, get the season done and dusted like many fans are. Hopefully have a positive pre-season and go for it next season. Again, if we can start knocking on the door of the top 7 again, that'd be perfect.
No, 1,000%. I think hopefully with sort of a bit of investment, Jimenez coming back, a few new signings. But there's obviously some top quality players in there, and I think Nuno can definitely get us to be the 5th, 6th, 7th best team in this division. Breaking into the top 4 is going to be the next question mark. But I think that as fans, if we're demanding, us to be, we should get rid of him because we need to finish top 7. There's a few extra steps between where we are currently to get up there. And I think Nuno can probably last us a bit longer, but I think you're right. He needs a transfer window and sort of, 12 games going into next season. And that you say, if we've not got that rapid rise then the questions, I guess, have got to be answered, questioned a bit more.
Yeah, I think we'd definitely be able to understand it then. I think, unfortunately for him, he set himself such a high standard now. Probably, as a manager, that's what you want to do. But he set himself such a high standard now. First season getting promoted, second season getting 7th, third season getting 7th. I don't think any of them, it would have been amazing if any other manager had come in and done that. And I think, like you say, I think Fosun, he signed a massive contract at the start of the season. I remember at the start of the season, everyone was saying, well, that's our biggest transfer of the window done then. And then like 3 or 4 months later, a lot of people slagging him off, So, but I think a lot of it's sort of the recruitment. Obviously, we know not a lot of it is sort of in his hands as such. He doesn't pick the budget. Most of the times, he probably doesn't even pick the players as such that are going to be sort of scouted or sort of put to his attention. I know apparently sort of he has the final word, which is fair enough. But
I don't quite believe that either.
Yeah. But you look at, other than that first season when we got promoted, that first summer, we have not had a good transfer window. No. So that's vital for the club, I think, to have a good transfer window this summer. If we could have jumped on that first season when we got Europe, I think they used an excuse. I think that they were, because I think the qualification for Europe finished when the transfer window was shut. Like it was after, and they didn't want to spend a load of money in us to get knocked out of Europe. But in that case, just bring in, I don't think we utilised the loan window at all that season. Used the loan window, so this summer is vital, I think, to see really where the club, if they're genuinely serious about us being this sort of so-called Premier League powerhouse they want us to be in a number of years' time.
No, well, fingers crossed on that, because, frankly, I think that we'll have a lot more content creation to do otherwise, which I was going to say won't be bad for me or you. But we'll wrap it up there for today's Stories from the Pack. Dave, big thanks for joining us once again, and hopefully we'll be able to catch up soon.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
Terrific. Smashing.